Hey folks, welcome back. Semester's almost halfway over, if you can believe it. Time flies when you're having fun, I guess. Just a quick note, on campus, this is the week right before fall break, and then there's a week off. So I think I'm supposed to go along with that in the online classes. So next week, you guys get a week off. We're not going to have any lectures or assignments or reading or anything like that. So do something fun. Go out and go to a farm and pick some pumpkins or something. I don't know. Anyway, so next week there won't be no assignments. This week, however, we are going to continue our talk about typography and all the fun things you can do with it. Last week we talked about the basics of it, the parts of a letter, serif and sans serif kind of fonts, and paging up text or formatting text. We talked about left alignment and justification and leading and tracking and kerning and all that kind of stuff, kind of the mechanics of it. This week we're going to talk about some of the fun things you can do with typography and kind of the purpose that it serves and our role as a designer when we're laying out type. There's a lot of different things you can do with typography, and the main thing we're trying to do is, as a designer, is we're trying to convey information. We have a lot of different tools in our arsenal, but we are supposed to convey information in a easy to understand way, sort of package it for the viewer so that they understand the important parts and kind of get the whole picture, not just if every advertisement or something like that was just a big block of text, then it would be kind of hard to understand what people are really excited about. If there's a certain part of their product that they want to sell, they couldn't do that, and that's why we have these different these tools to create a hierarchy. That's we have a lot of different things that we can do to create hierarchy, but that's really what we do with typography, and we're going to talk about these different things we can do. So when we're looking at a document, let's say we're looking at a story in a magazine. Okay, we have different parts. We have a title. We have generally some subheads, and then the body copy, and then within that there might be some bold words or maybe a pull quote, which is where they take a couple sentences out of the article and make them larger and put them in a different font or something, change the color to really kind of emphasize that point within the text. So there are a lot of different things that we can do to create this visual hierarchy, which is basically just differing levels of emphasis. Okay, so we know where the viewer's eye goes first, what they see second, and then where it goes from there. First thing is contrast. If you have a block of text that is 12-point Helvetica, and then at the top of that you have something that's 24-point Helvetica bold, obviously that's going to stand out more. There are other things you could do, for instance, with the kerning. If you spread out the kerning so everything's normal except for the headline, which is really spread out, that's obviously going to draw attention to it. Basically, we're just drawing attention to different parts, and that's what creates this hierarchy. So contrast, you can put more tracking in a headline or something like that, for example. Placement. If you have something, a single line of text in the middle of a page, obviously that's where your eye is going to go. If you have a whole article, just the placement on the page. If you have maybe one column that is over here on the side and then the rest of the text is over here, it might, your eye might be drawn to one column first. Or if you have differing column widths, for example, like say the first column is this wide, the second column is this wide, your eye's probably going to go to the larger one first. If you have one line in a column that's twice as long as the rest of the lines in the column, that's different, so that's where the emphasis is going to be. This is all pretty basic stuff. Obviously, size is a big factor in creating hierarchy. The larger the word is, the more it's going to stand out. And bolding as well. A bold word is going to stand out next to a regular word and all that kind of stuff. Color and value is another thing. Obviously, if the text is black and the headline is black and bigger and bolder, the headline is going to stand out. If the text is black, the headline could be bigger. If it's light blue or very light gray or something, the text might actually stick out more than the headline even though the headline's bigger, just because of color differences. But you can use this to your advantage too. You can get color systems. Maybe if you want something to really stand out, you put it in bold red letters going across the top or in the middle. Maybe if you want a different level, maybe the headline is a bright red bold, and then the subheads are kind of bold black, and then the copy is just black. There are all these different systems that you can set up to get this hierarchy. Let's see, what else can you do? You can also, you can combine other elements from your design. Maybe for your headline color, anything in color. When you're looking at black and white, if there's one thing that's in color, that's going to stick out because that's the most different. But maybe for your headline color, you pull a color from an image that you're using. Like if you're picture of water, you might use a shade of that blue for your headline color, and then for the subheads, maybe another shade. But so there's you can use that to create hierarchy as well. The thing, you don't want to get carried away with this because again, like I said, we are creating these kind of packets of information for the viewer, and we need to create this visual hierarchy, but it needs to make sense. So if you have every font or every headline in a different font or different size, the reader's not going to be able to assimilate that information very well. So you need to have sort of a limited system that you use for each design. By all means, experiment and play around, but in one piece, you don't want to have 20 different things that you're trying to do. You generally want to have maybe one size and color for headlines, another size and color for subheads, one size and font for pull quotes, and then your body copy is pretty consistent size. And that kind of creates this visual system that the reader can pick up on, and they just kind of process it without thinking too much about it, and that's kind of what we want. And an example of this, since we all have our book, just to kind of see how these visual systems are created, and they kind of go under the radar. We don't even pay attention to it, but we react to it regardless. The beginning of each chapter, they've done some really cool things with typography where form and space, they played around with the placement, and obviously the size is very large, and so you read that as the big title, the headline, and then these little blocks of text are quotes that people have relating to that. So they're smaller, they're still in black, but they're in a white square, which kind of calls attention to them. And then the title of the person and the name of the person who said it is, the name's a little bit larger, but it's in gray. So that kind of, it creates these levels. Like first you read this, then you read this, then you read this, then you read this. And then they've also used much smaller gray letters so you can see the different parts of the chapter, and then over here, chapter 1, so you know what chapter it is. So they've created this sort of this visual hierarchy, and then within the chapter, you can see, the text itself, the body copy is in a kind of a gray, so that they can, have something that's a step ahead of that in the hierarchy. They use these black squares at the beginning of a page, saying this is where this thought starts, with an arrow. Then they have kind of bold letters at the beginning of an idea, which might be a couple paragraphs that they're talking about. They also use black circles or black squares, almost like bullet points within the text to kind of say, as a stopping point, like, okay, let's wrap up this idea and move on to another idea. The captions for the pictures, they might have, it looks like they have the first two words in, let me see if I can put that up there. First two words in bold letters to really get the idea across, and then the rest of the text is in regular letters. And then there's a little line underneath it, which creates another level of the visual hierarchy. And then the name of the studio that created the piece that they're talking about in gray, and the studio is bold, and the location is in italic. So all these different levels. It's just an example of how to create visual hierarchy.